The master key that didn't fit. Click, click, nothing. That was the sound of Karen's shiny brass master key failing against the driver's side door of my truck at 6:30 in the morning. Her smirk faltered. Her pearl necklace caught the first blush of sunrise, and for the first time in a long time, she looked like someone who wasn't in control. You've got to picture it. Low-angle view, her shadow stretching across the gravel like some HOA-sized monster, me standing on my porch in coffee-stained sweatpants, neighbors cracking blinds and peering through slits like they were watching a neighborhood nature documentary. You could feel the air vibrating with anticipation, the smell of wet grass from sprinklers mixing with gasoline from the truck. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Would the HOA's self-proclaimed queen finally overplay her hand? I'll rewind. This wasn't the first time Karen tried to pull a stunt like this. Ever since I parked my old Silverado on my own driveway, she'd been circling like a hawk. Letters stuffed in my mailbox with bold black ink. Community compliance reminder. Oversized vehicles must be stored in approved areas. At meetings, she'd stand, back ramrod straight, blazer pressed like she ironed it with anger, declaring that certain residents were endangering property values. Never mind that 3 other trucks lived on the same street. Mine just happened to be the one she decided was an eyesore. The thing about Karen was that she didn't just enforce the rules. She made new ones in her head and acted like they'd always been written in stone. She had this laminated binder with tabs and sticky notes like it was the HOA Bible, and she'd quote from it in a voice dripping with superiority. So when I got a notice saying, "Failure to comply may result in HOA key access being used," I laughed it off. Key access? To my truck? Surely even Karen wasn't that unhinged. And then came that morning. I was pouring coffee when I heard the metallic rattle. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then I heard it again, deliberate, impatient. I stepped outside just in time to see her, hair sprayed into suburban helmet perfection, crouched at my truck like a cat burglar in pearls. She was trying to make the brass key fit, jiggling it, whispering under her breath like she could will it into working. "Karen," I called, leaning on the porch railing. "Lose something." She straightened, clutching the key like it was Excalibur. "This vehicle is in violation," she snapped, already defensive. "The HOA has authority to access community property." "My truck isn't community property," I shot back. "It's mine. Registered, insured, and parked in my own driveway. Not exactly a gray area." Her eyes narrowed, jaw tight. "The board approved master keys for safety purposes. If a vehicle poses a hazard..." I cut her off. "Karen, the only hazard here is you scratching my paint job." A curtain fluttered across the street. Old Mr. Harris was out early, sipping his coffee and shaking his head like he'd been waiting for this showdown all summer. 2 houses down, a mom hustled her kid into the car seat, whispering to him like, "Don't look, honey." It was theater, and Karen was performing for an unwilling audience. She tried again, forcing the key. The scrape of metal against metal made my stomach tighten. I came down the steps, slow and deliberate. "Tell you what," I said, keeping my voice calm but just loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "why don't we grab your binder, check those bylaws, and see if there's a page about breaking into someone's truck at dawn?" Her cheeks flushed pink. "Don't be ridiculous. This is for the good of the neighborhood. Oversized vehicles lower curb appeal, and I won't stand by while property values suffer." That's when I realized this wasn't about rules at all. It was about control. Karen couldn't stand that I hadn't bent to her letters or bowed in meetings. My truck wasn't a violation, it was a symbol. And symbols, to Karen, were threats to her empire. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over the camera. "Smile," I said. "If you really believe the HOA has a right to break into private vehicles, then you won't mind me recording for documentation." For a split second, she froze. Her eyes flicked to the neighbor's blinds, then back to me. She dropped the key into her pocket with a clink and stood taller. "This isn't over," she hissed. "The board will be hearing about your non-compliance." "Good," I replied. "Maybe they can also hear about attempted unlawful entry." Her lips pressed into a thin line. but she didn't answer. Instead, she clicked down the walkway in those sharp heels, muttering something under her breath. I stood by the truck, one hand on the cool metal door, pulse still hammering from the near scratch. The neighborhood was buzzing now. Quiet whispers, the kind of gossip that would multiply by noon. I thought that would be the end of it, that maybe embarrassment would slow her down. But Karen wasn't the type to lick her wounds quietly. She was already plotting her next move, and I knew, just by the way she clutched that fake master key like it had betrayed her, that the real storm was still coming. And sure enough, 2 hours later, she came back. Only this time, she wasn't alone. "Ma'am," the officer said flatly, "that's not a real badge." Karen froze mid-speech, her laminated plastic neighborhood safety liaison card dangling from a lanyard like a child's craft project. Now, let me back up, because if you think Karen simply walked away after her master key failed, you don't know Karen. Humiliation was her least favorite flavor, and she wasn't about to swallow it without a fight. I knew she'd retaliate. What I didn't know was that she'd come back that very same afternoon armed with backup and props. I was under my truck, changing the oil, when I heard the sound of deliberate footsteps. Not just one pair this time, 3. I rolled out from under the frame, wiped my hands on a rag, and there she was, Karen, flanked by 2 board members who looked like they'd been pulled away from a library committee meeting against their will. One had an ill-fitting navy blazer with elbow patches. The other carried a manila folder like it was evidence in a federal case. Karen didn't waste time. She held up the badge, laminated and crooked inside its sleeve. "Sir," she announced, voice dripping with authority, "as Neighborhood Safety Liaison, I am officially notifying you that this vehicle is a public safety risk. The HOA board is unified in this decision." The neighbors gathered again, like moths to a suburban flame. Curtains twitched, doors cracked open. Someone across the street actually pulled out a lawn chair. It was the middle of the day, birds chirping, lawnmowers buzzing in the distance, and yet all of it faded into background noise behind Karen's performance. I leaned against the hood, trying not to laugh. A public safety risk? It's a truck, not a nuclear reactor. She narrowed her eyes. Oversized vehicles block line of sight, impede emergency access, and invite unsavory activity. She rattled this off like she'd practiced it in the mirror. The manila folder guy nodded solemnly. "It's in the bylaws," he muttered, though he didn't actually open the folder. I decided to play along. Funny, I've read those bylaws front to back. Nothing about trucks and driveways. Nothing about safety liaisons either. Did you invent that role, Karen? Or did you order the badge off Etsy? That's when she snapped. She waved the badge like it was a warrant. "Do not disrespect this office. This neighborhood depends on law and order, and if you refuse compliance, I will have no choice but to escalate." And right on cue, 2 squad cars rolled up. The crowd murmured like it was opening night at the theater. Blue and red lights flashed across windows, bouncing off chrome and sprinklers. The officers stepped out, calm but watchful. You could almost see Karen swell with self-importance, as if she'd summoned the cavalry. "Officers," she began, striding forward, "thank you for responding so quickly. This individual," she gestured at me with a dramatic sweep, "is harboring a vehicle that violates community safety regulations. I've already attempted to secure compliance, but he has been resistant." One officer raised an eyebrow. "Community safety regulations? You mean HOA guidelines?" "Yes," Karen insisted. "We have broad authority, and as Neighborhood Safety Liaison, I am empowered to enforce those rules. This truck could endanger lives. Children play here, families walk their pets. Visibility is compromised." "Karen," I cut in, "it's parked in my own driveway, on flat pavement, next to 3 other vehicles. If my Silverado is a menace, then so is Harris's RV and Martinez's van." Officer number 2 looked at me, then back at Karen. "Ma'am, do you have any legal documentation that gives you authority over private vehicles?" Karen puffed herself up. "The board has a master key system. It's for emergencies." "That's not how that works," the officer replied. His voice was steady, but you could hear the skepticism underneath. Karen doubled down. She launched into a tirade, words spilling faster than the sprinklers hissing in the background. Community rights, property values, unauthorized modifications. This man is undermining the fabric of our neighborhood. I swear she tried to talk over the officer, over me, over the whole street. Her voice carried like an air raid siren, bouncing off stucco and garage doors. The board members stood behind her, shuffling awkwardly, clearly wishing they'd stayed home. Finally, the officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, enough. That badge you're holding is not official. You do not have enforcement power, and attempting to access his vehicle this morning, that could be considered attempted unlawful entry." Silence, then a ripple of whispers from the gathered neighbors. Someone actually gasped. Karen's face went crimson. She sputtered, waving the badge one last time like a drowning person clinging to driftwood. You don't understand. I have the board's support. This man is dangerous." The officer shook his head, already done. "Ma'am, what I understand is that you've overstepped. If you keep pressing this, you're the one we'll have to deal with." And that was the moment. The crack in her empire. The look on her face wasn't just shock, it was fear. She'd spent years ruling this neighborhood with binder tabs and pearl-clad intimidation, and now, in front of everyone, the illusion was shattering. But here's the thing about Karen. She never retreats quietly. As the officers turned toward me, asking for a calm statement, I caught her eyes. They burned, not with defeat, but with something more dangerous. A promise. She wasn't done. Not by a long shot. "Ma'am, turn around and place your hands behind your back." The pearls around Karen's neck caught the red and blue flashes like they were on fire, bouncing light across her blazer as she flailed her arms. She tried to argue, tried to shout the officers down, but her voice was ragged now, breaking under the weight of authority that wasn't hers. Neighbors edged closer to their windows, some filming, some whispering, all of them watching the queen of the cul-de-sac fall. You could feel the energy shift. It wasn't just drama anymore, it was spectacle. The kind of moment that would echo through HOA meetings, whispered behind hedges and muttered over backyard fences for years to come. And the best part? Karen had built the gallows herself, every rung made from her letters, her power trips, her shiny master key that didn't open a thing. But let me set the stage properly. After the officers told her point blank she had no authority, you'd think she'd simmer down. That would have been the smart move. Karen didn't do smart moves. She doubled down, voice rising, words colliding into each other. "This neighborhood depends on order. He's defying the board. If you won't act, then you're aiding non-compliance." The board members looked like they wanted to sink into the pavement. One actually pinched the bridge of his nose, mumbling something about not signing up for this. Meanwhile, Karen whipped out her phone and started scrolling furiously. "I have documentation," she shouted, stabbing at the screen. "Photos, reports, letters. This is a pattern of behavior." "Karen," I said, arms crossed, "you've been stalking my driveway like it's your second job. Maybe the pattern here is you." The crowd chuckled. Yes, chuckled, because by then the neighborhood wasn't even pretending to side with her. People who once smiled politely at her pool inspections or her lawn-length memos were suddenly free, and you could see it in their eyes. The spell was breaking. The officer gestured. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to calm down." But calm wasn't in Karen's vocabulary. She waved her badge again, that flimsy laminate wobbling in the wind. "I am the neighborhood safety liaison, and if you won't respect my authority, then I'll escalate this myself." The officer exchanged a look with his partner, then reached for his radio. "Dispatch, confirm. We've got prior complaints logged on this subject?" The reply crackled back almost immediately. Prior complaints confirmed. Body cam footage from earlier in the morning, my call to the non-emergency line, and multiple neighbor statements starting to filter in as texts and voicemails. Turns out, when a community has been pushed too far, they don't mind speaking up once they see the tide turning. That's when the officer dropped the line that cracked the dam wide open. "Ma'am, based on statements and your own admission of attempting to access his vehicle, we have grounds for unlawful entry." Her jaw dropped. She sputtered. I was performing my duty." "Your duty doesn't involve impersonating law enforcement," the officer said, nodding at her badge, "or trespassing on private property." The crowd murmured louder now. Mr. Harris, the old man across the street, actually barked out a laugh. "Told you she'd trip over her pearls one day." Karen spun, eyes wild, face blotched crimson. "This is all lies. You're conspiring against me. I'll have you all removed from the association." But no one moved. No one supported her. Even her fellow board members edged away, one taking off his blazer like he didn't want to be identified in the group photo. Then came the sound, the sharp metallic click of handcuffs sliding open. Karen backed up. "No, you can't do this. I'm the president. I control access. I have authority." The officer's voice was steady. "Not tonight, ma'am. Turn around." The neighborhood collectively inhaled. And then, impossibly, she did turn, pearl necklace glinting, hair perfect even as her body shook with indignation. The cuffs clicked into place, silver against the white of her blazer sleeves. That was the mic drop moment. Years of intimidation, binder thumping, and mailbox notices reduced to a sputtering woman being led to a squad car. The crowd didn't cheer. This wasn't that kind of neighborhood, but the silence was just as loud. Relief hummed in the air, the way it does after a storm finally breaks. She kept shouting, though. Oh, she wasn't going down quiet. "You don't understand. This is bigger than me. This is about preserving our values, about keeping order." Her voice cracked as the door shut behind her, muffling the words until all you could see was her silhouette thrashing against the cruiser's glass. I leaned back against my truck, the cool metal grounding me as my pulse slowed. The neighborhood was buzzing with whispers now, phones out, cameras catching every angle, and I knew this wasn't just about Karen anymore. This was about the HOA, about the cracks in the empire she built, about all the others who'd let her lead them with fear and fine print. The question wasn't whether Karen would come back. The question was who in the neighborhood might try to step into the vacuum she left behind. Because power doesn't disappear in places like this. It shifts. And as the squad car pulled away, pearls flashing one last time in the lights, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle hadn't even started yet.